Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam rasulillah, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Dear brothers and sisters, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is your brother Gabriel and Sheikh Abdul Wahab Saleem, coming to you with a very important topic, something that needs to be addressed in the light of the events that have taken place this past week. The killing of that British soldier in England by so-called Muslims. We've seen the horrific scenes, we have seen the video, we have seen what the news is saying, we have seen what people are doing now as a response to that. And we'll comment on this, inshallah. But let's tackle the problem, because it seems like a lot of people are not talking that much about it. And we need to be a bit more vocal about clearing this issue up, because it's affecting Muslims at large, specifically Muslims living in non-Muslim lands. So Sheikh Abdul Wahab Saleem, first and foremost, barakallahu feek, jazakallah khair for being on this. The question that we want to ask, some people are saying, I see my brothers, my sisters, my friends back home being killed, being tortured by, so-called invasion and armies and of these lands that I myself live in. They say, it's upon me to take it upon myself. It's upon me to do something about this. I'm in this land. I'm in this so-called Darul Harb, land of the war, and I should do something. So they take it upon themselves and they do certain crimes such as this. What's the Islamic view on this, and how can we approach this issue?
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah. Alhamdulillahi hamdan yuwafi ni'amahu wa yukafi'u mazidah, wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. First and foremost, I would like to say that definitely the Muslims they always feel like they're one body, and that's why the Prophet ﷺ said, Al-Muslimu lil-Muslimi kal-bunyani yashuddu ba'duhu ba'da. That a believer to another believer he's like a wall, or like a structure. Every single tile, every single brick in that structure reinforces the rest of the structure. So definitely the Muslims, when they see things, and this is where you're from the psychology background, and I want to talk on your behalf for a second. The Muslims, when they hear these sort of things, you have to understand for the non-Muslim viewer right now, you have to understand the Muslim psychology. They go through a lot of psychological turmoil. They're thinking that this is the wall, this is our wall, and it's now being broken, and something is happening to our wall. So that's why in return these sort of acts come to surface. But even so, the Prophet ﷺ also said, in this deen, our religion, Islam, it covers every aspect. It's not just one aspect. It doesn't excel in one thing and then it doesn't look at the other at all. Rather, every single aspect is clearly discussed. So you have to look at another tradition of the Prophet ﷺ where he said, هَلَكَ الْمُتَنَطِّعُونَ هَلَكَ الْمُتَنَطِّعُونَ هَلَكَ الْمُتَنَطِّعُونَ. Those that are extreme, they have sought destruction for themselves again and again. And the Prophet ﷺ said it over here again and again, 3 times. So definitely those that act extreme, they're not acceptable in the scope of Islam. Now, in terms of your question, Jibreel, about Dar Harb, Dar Islam, Dar Kufr, and these sort of things, we have to look at this and analyze it in a modern perspective. And I don't want to change the Sharia, of course, because I don't have the right to do that. But I want to say that you have to understand everything and be able to apply it properly. Number one, the first thing that we can say over here is the fact that every single country that a lot of these acts of violence occur against from the Muslims, if they are really from the Muslims, they usually occur with the notion that this place is a place that is supposed to be at war with Islam. And that's not the case, because of the fact that the United Nations has a treaty with every single country, or most of the countries in the world. Every single country that's within that treaty has now signed a treaty, so this would be called Daru Ahdin or Daru Hudnatin, and in a modern way, some scholars have put it as Daru Silm, a place where there's a covenant, a place where there's a treaty, a place where there's peace as well. So the point of the matter is that this wouldn't necessarily be considered Dar Harb. Now what I want to do is I want to share a story that I heard from one of the scholars in a visit that I made in Jeddah. The scholar, he said that I traveled to a Western country, and I'm not going to name the country. I traveled to a Western country, and as soon as I got there, I said salam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I was praying salah, I was leading salah, and I prayed salah. After my salah, someone came up to me and he said, Shaykh, are we living in Dar Harb? Are we living in a place of war? So the Shaykh looked at him surprised. He said, I haven't even spent 15 minutes in this country yet, and this person is asking me. And this is the level of extremism that has become part and parcel of some of the Muslim views, and we are trying to combat that. We're trying to cure that. It's our dirty laundry and we're trying to fix it. And the Shaykh said, let me ask you a question. He said, are you freely allowed to practice your deen? Number one. Of course he said yes. And he said, are you allowed to call people to Islam? He said yes. He said, in that case, this is not the case. Over here, you're allowed to practice your deen, you're allowed to call people to Islam. So your obligation is now to call people to Islam. Because back in the days, what used to happen was, if a leader would accept Islam, the whole country would accept. But now every person thinks on his own. So you have to convince every single person individually and teach them about Islam. And you have the opportunity to do that. And that's why even Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah in his popular Fatwa, he was asked about a certain locality. And he said something like, of course his Fatwa was very badly misunderstood by some people. He said something like, that they should then be dealt with as Islam pleases for them to be dealt with. The place where Muslims are allowed to practice their religion, as in you give them all their rights, everything that is due to them, and you don't attack, you don't. And when I'm saying all of these things, act of violence a Muslim did against a non-Muslim, I say the same thing for a non-Muslim. If a non-Muslim does an act of violence, an Eastern soul is no more beloved and no more dear to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than a Western soul. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, من قتل نفسا بغير نفس أو فساد في الأرض فكأنما قتل الناس جميعا. That whoever kills a soul without a justifiable reason, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned two reasons here, then it's as if he's killed all of humanity. So the soul in and of itself, it has some sort of level in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Barakallah fiqh, Sheikh. The other thing that we want to maybe highlight here, and I think it's very important, is that the Muslim Ummah is a body, without a doubt. And even in its problems these days and all the issues, there's this unity, right, that even non-Muslims recognize. However, that doesn't mean that any part of that body can take it upon themselves to make a ruling or to decide the fate of the whole body. Such as, I'll do something that I feel from my emotions and then cause the rest of the people who might be in that country, or right now living in the global village, the rest of the people in the world, to suffer based on my emotional, misunderstanding maybe of something, or just my emotional or psychological problem, that I do something and I say this is the ummah or this is the Muslim perspective. Because it definitely seems, based on this, and based on the reactionary attacks that took place after what this happened, that people are thinking that, hey, this is what Muslims think. Let's attack their mosques. Let's beat their women in hijab and so on.
I want to comment on that. I want to say, subhanAllah, what you're saying is really correct. And that was the very cure that the Prophet ﷺ also employed. Oftentimes, something would occur, something would seem like this individual is a hypocrite or something of that sort. And a certain Sahabi would say, O Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, let me chop off the neck of this hypocrite. And the Prophet ﷺ said, slow down, relax. As in, don't let your emotions overtake you. Look at your intellect. Think about what exactly is happening. Assess the situation in a proper manner. So definitely, we don't let as Muslims, we're not supposed to be reactionary. We don't let our emotions take over. And because of our emotions, then we go and wrong other people.
Barakallah fiqh, Sheikh. Jazakallah khair. We're actually running out of time, but I want to just end up with one point. Looking at the situation, looking at what's happening, not just with this case, there's actually many other cases that have been taking place. We need to analyze this from a greater picture. And if we look at psychology, the damaging effect, and I have a background in psychology, the damaging effect that takes place from someone witnessing his family being murdered, his wife or sister being raped in front of him, or the wife or sister of his friend, his people, right? To a lesser degree, and different variations of impact. But psychologists say that this definitely has an impact. Psychologists don't justify the actions of criminals. As we don't. However, they look at it. And I'm saying here psychologists. They look at it and they say, from a psychological point of view, we can understand the damage that's been done to this person. And we can understand that this is a reaction that might happen because of that. So people need to look at the greater picture. If you do something to someone, it might come back to hunt you.
As in solve the problem from the root.
Solve the problem from the root.
For both ends.
At the same time now, there's a little bit an issue of contradiction here because, these so-called Muslims have done this, right? Based on what they consider, as the video says and shows on everyone can access and see. They're saying this is what's happening back home. This is what we see every day. Okay, so we're doing this because of that, which is unjustifiable.
Yeah.
However, it's understood that these people have some really problems, some big problems, right? At the same time, after this event, so many events are recorded by anti-Muslim acts and violence against them, which is again a reactionary act,
so it's
right?
So
it's the same psychological problem. It's like, okay, they did it to my friend, a soldier, emotion, he's defending us, so okay, let's go, and bomb the masjid with the fire or whatever, and I'm going to walk in the masjid with a knife, and I'm going to attack women who are wearing hijab, or a guy who has a beard. This is the same problem. So we are telling you guys, how can you say that you have no justification, whatever happens over there, But we are actually reacting upon the same type of impulse, which is totally unacceptable, both sides.
So it's like a call to everybody to think, ponder, assess the situation, and to a great extent, let the authorities do their job.
This is something very important that each and every Muslim has to think about, each and every individual, each and every human being has to think about. We are out of time. Again, Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much, Sheikh Abdul, Saleem, and your brother Gabriel. We'll see you inshallah next time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.